Good evening. And don't get nervous. That won't help me any. I do want to say what a privilege it is to be here. Welcome to Bethany Holiness, and also welcome to HMA Conference of 2017. It's an honor to be a part, a privilege. It's wonderful, absolutely wonderful, to see so many dear and precious friends. I thought about what I would say, but I do want to say it's wonderful to have my Papa Messer, Brother Messer, with us. He has been a grandfather figure in my life spiritually and also personally for ever since before I even could walk. So it's wonderful to have him here. That's a wonderful privilege. He was there at a lot of decision points in my life, taught me how to pray, taught me the importance of that, and I'm very thankful for that. I want to say it's great to have Brother Lamb here. I'm a little bit nervous before speaking before you, but it's wonderful to have you here. I got to spend some personal time with his family on some of my breaks through Bible school, and he actually helped me win a oneness and Trinitarian argument at Bible school. But the only sad thing is that I was on the oneness side. So thanks for that. And then, there we go. And then, Brother JR, it's always wonderful to see you. And obviously, I do have a small connection with you because we're both from Florida, and so I like anybody from Florida. But I do want to start straight into this and just say, want to extend my thanks to Brother Sloggett for his confidence in me, for this opportunity tonight. I don't take it lightly. I also want to say thank you to my pastor, Brother Tolliver, for his active role in this conference as well as in HMA and also in my life. And I know without a doubt that he prays for me and that he's there for me. And there's been times when I've come into this church and I've heard him calling out my name in prayer, and that means the world to me. I appreciate that. When Brother Todd told me I would be speaking at this conference, I literally lost my appetite that day. I did not know who all would be here. I didn't know who I would end up knowing, who I wouldn't know. I was nervous because I feel incredibly insignificant to be standing before you tonight and speaking to you. However, I was also extremely honored, and I'm also extremely excited to be able to speak to you tonight and to just share part of my heart. I've been able to be at HMA conferences for the past 3 or 4 years. I missed last year because I was in the Philippines on a mission trip. But I'm excited tonight and all throughout this conference, just to see how God will touch our hearts, how God will change lives. I want to hear, testimonies of you guys going back to your designated homes and places and doing a great work for God. And that is the main vision of this entire conference to me. Many of you do already know me, but for those of you who do not, I'm Charity Hayden. I live here in Oklahoma, and Bethany is my home church. I'm incredibly blessed to be a part of this church. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. My life is constantly changed and challenged, and it's a true blessing to be here. I do live a very active, a very busy, and yet an amazing life here. Aside from working full-time, I had a banking job during the weeks, and that itself is a mission field and holds a lot of craziness in it. I also volunteer at the Saving Place as needed. I also volunteer and live full-time as an intern and assistant at one of the affiliate organizations that's involved with HMA that Brother Sloggett has already mentioned, called Martha's Heart. And you will hear that presented tomorrow. I also work alongside the Sloggett family, as well as the Driscolls, and several others as a current HMA staff right now. I'm also a college student online, working towards my bachelor's in counseling with a minor in TESOL and intercultural studies. And TESOL stands for Teaching English as a Second Language. Summing up, basically, my life right now, I absolutely love outreach. I love missions. I love evangelism. I just love being able to be a willing hand and a willing foot to reach a broken and a lost world, and even those broken and hurt within our own church walls. That's truly my greatest desire, is to work for God. And everything He would have me to do, that's what I want to be. And my greatest prayer would be that I could die empty because I gave all of my life to God and for His kingdom. I have not always lived here in Oklahoma. Actually, I have not even lived here 1 year yet. It held a lot of adjustments for me to move and make that 18-hour trip all the way here from North Carolina almost a year ago. Just to give you a little history, I did mention it shortly there with Brother JR. I was born in Jacksonville, Florida, where my parents were helping pastor a church there. And from there, we moved at least 12 or 15 times as different doors opened for pastoring and for ministering. And I won't even try to go through all of it and tell you where I've been and where I haven't. I know I'd lose you between the state lines. But we moved to Fayetteville, North Carolina when I was 12 years old. And that is where my parents still are currently, working in many forms of outreach there, such as meals and services on the streets and volunteering at Crisis Pregnancy Center, community outreaches, bus routes, and more of which you will hear from my father in just a few moments. I worked alongside them, and most of those outreaches, some a little bit more intensely than others, up until I moved to Bible school in Export, Pennsylvania, called Free Gospel Bible Institute after I graduated from high school. And those years at Bible school were precious times indeed in my life. And God laid on my heart a much larger global viewpoint and passion and purpose for my life than I could have ever dreamed. I made lifetime friends from my roommates, from my classmates, from even some of my professors there. And the two biggest things I walked away with was a prayer life and then a joyfulness to serve. Regardless of anything else going on around you or inside of you, that it's always a joy to serve. Throughout high school, Bible school, and afterwards, I was blessed with multiple open doors for foreign as well as local missions. Foreign missions included trips to Mexico and Honduras, the Philippines, and South Korea, and even a couple of extended layovers in Istanbul, Turkey. On those trips, we worked with any age, but primarily young children up to young adults. And we focused on children's crusades, community Sunday schools and VBSs, teaching in a Bible college, teaching English classes, feeding, and some manual labor there in the villages. And what I enjoyed most of all was just learning and living and working beside the missionaries and just gaining all of the knowledge that they had. Each time my life was radically changed, I felt like I came back a completely different person than when I left. And every time I went, I felt like I left more of my heart on foreign soil than American soil. And having said all that, you may be sitting there and you may be thinking, that I've always been this way, that I was always, the good little church girl image, and that I had my whole life together ever since I could learn how to walk. But I assure you, though, that's not always the case. I did grow up in a pastor's home, primarily my entire life. I attended countless camp meetings, youth camps, revivals, services, outreaches, you name it. My parents raised each of my siblings and I involved in nursing home ministries and radio ministries and visiting widows and orphans and serving at the local homeless mission every Thanksgiving Day and what felt like always in church, always busy, always serving, always giving. I was completely surrounded by it. I was completely immersed in it. And I look back now at my childhood and my early teen years, and I know I was blessed beyond what I could have ever deserved to be in such a home like that and to have the parents I had. I had a mother who knew how to pray, and she instilled in me such a passion to serve and to give and a lifestyle and an attitude that whatever God told you to do, that's what you do. It doesn't matter what anybody else says or what anybody comes up against you with. I had a father who did not mind being different than the majority. He taught me, it's okay to be different than the majority. It's okay to stand out, and he genuinely wanted the best for every single other person around him. He also instilled that in me. But we all know that life is not perfect, and neither are we because we're human. And sometimes things happen that we could all say, it was unfair. And as I grew older and I went through high school and that preteen and teen phase, and those are major points in anyone's life, I drifted in some areas. And there was a point in my life that I still worked in the church. I taught Sunday school to all the little children. I even led morning worship on Sundays. I went to prayer meeting faithfully. I could fill any spot that was needed in the church, but my whole heart wasn't in it. And I played church for a while. I had words down. I had the attitude down. I had the right outward look, but inwardly, I was hurting. I was searching for identity, and I felt misplaced. and I wondered countless times what my purpose even was. In the first year of high school, I was already planning ahead, and I had completely different goals for my life than what probably everybody else expected of me or what anyone else would have thought in their minds. I'd picked out a career in a university, and I had everything mentally lined up to graduate high school a year early and go and make something great of myself. And I was very stubborn and very hard-headed and set on doing my own thing, my own way, and being my own person. And ministry wasn't included in any of that. God was barely included in any of that. However, when I was 16 and 17, multiple things happened in my life that completely changed me, and I will not take time to go into all of those details, but I will share just a small bit. I went on a mission trip to Mexico, and I stayed there a month. The previous trips had just been 1 week to 2 weeks, and so I came back to the States expecting to feel satisfied that I had just given an entire month of my life to mission work, and so now I should feel free to go and do what I wanted and to pursue my career. But when I returned, that's not how I felt. I would go to sleep at night, and I would have these dreams, and I would have these thoughts, and during those nights, God would just come and meet me, and my heart would just break, and God loved me, and He healed things inside of me, and He wooed me back, and He called me His own. And those were such precious nights of my life. And around that same time, I also ran across HMA online, and my first introduction to it was Brother David Lamb and Revival Tabernacle in Kentucky. I would listen to all of the sermons I could from you guys. I would read all of the material I could. I felt like my heart was just a sponge. And God began redefining things for me. He taught me what true holiness was. He taught me what being a true Christian was. He showed me how real and how personal His love was for me. I came to a point of a lot of decision times. It was no longer good enough to just go to church and be under the umbrella of I was the pastor's daughter. It was no longer good enough to be able to go and be involved in everything and be able to do everything, yet live any way I wanted to once I exited the church doors. It was no longer good enough for me to just accept and do all the standards and all the convictions, that come with tradition within the church. I wanted to know what I believed for myself and what the Bible taught. So I questioned everybody and I questioned everything. And it was no longer good enough for just my mama's prayers, and I wanted that personal prayer life for myself. I wanted to hear God's voice for myself. I wanted to know what it was. I wanted to cultivate that relationship. And throughout all of that, I started looking at myself and everybody else around me as more than just strangers and individuals and peoples, but I started looking at them as souls in need of a personal Savior. And I realized that God did not let me live to that point, to let me live it to myself and for myself. And the last part of Matthew 9:12 became my verse that I went to over and over and over. And it says, "They that be whole need not a physician, but they that are sick." And I cannot begin to explain the inward and even some outward transformations that I went through and the passion that God instilled in me. And I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't know how to contain it. And doors began opening for outreach and evangelism and one-on-one and out of my comfort involvement. And HMA greatly influenced and helped that and led and guided me in those things. And while I was in Bible college, I was given the opportunity to visit several HMA affiliates. And I actually volunteered a few summers here with the Sloggett family at the Saving Place and Bethany Outreach. I remember my very first trip to Oklahoma. I made an almost 21-hour trip with complete strangers that I didn't even know from Bible college. And I met Sister Nikki at this random truck stop and then went and crashed in their guest bedroom for like the rest of the day or 2 days. They were so kind to me, though, and they let me intern there at the Saving Place and let me stay there a couple of weeks. And they introduced me to so many doors of evangelism and outreach, and it was just a wonderful time in my life. In the summer of 2016, last summer, I spent the majority of that summer overseas doing mission work. And when I returned stateside, doors began to open, and it led me here to Oklahoma. Long story short, regardless of the many times I told everyone that I greatly disliked Oklahoma, I moved here shortly after that. And here we are today. Time has flown by. I've settled in. I've found wonderful friends. I have been given wonderful adopted family here. I'm incredibly blessed to be learning and growing and working with these people and to be here at this church. And I actually kind of like Oklahoma now. Kind of. And I know I gave you a lot of information there, a lot about me, and I am perfectly fine if you forget the majority of those personal details I just shared. Because each of us here, we can talk about where we're from and who we are and what all we've done, but honestly, that's not what I'm personally after. Because even though I do love my life, and I greatly appreciate the life-changing involvement of HMA, we are not even the answer. It's not about me. It's not about us here locally in Oklahoma. It's not about us as a group of HMA. To me, it's all about the one who gave it all. And his name is Jesus. And he's become my greatest desire, my closest friend, my lover, and my everlasting Father. And throughout my young life and my short time of involvement here with HMA, I can say both have taught me a lot about how precious life is and how much God loves me for me. And that same love he has for me is for everybody else around me that I come into contact with. I've also learned you can't judge a book by its cover. There's a lot of things that are not nearly as important as you once thought they were in life. And that my life is not my own. It's been bought with a price. I cannot expect to win anything in this life until I first learn how to lose some things. And I realized that prayer is my most powerful tool that I will ever have. I've also realized that anybody can be ordinary, but more importantly, I've realized that I didn't have to remain that ordinary, but that I was born with a divine will and a purpose for my life, so much greater than I could have ever dreamed up all by myself when I was still in high school. And not disregarding any of my elder saints here tonight, because I do love and I appreciate each and every one of you. But for a few moments, I want to talk to the younger generation from another youth's perspective. So I'm very thankful for the young people that are here tonight. You may listen to these sessions. You may come faithfully to every one of these services. And you may see each and every one of us who get up here, the ministers, and you may think to yourself, well, I can never do that. I will never be like them. They're way up here. I'm way down here. It's no use. And it's very true. Each one of these godly men who have come are definitely men of God. There is so much wisdom that can be gained from them. But I want the younger generation here, my generation, those younger than me, a little bit older than me, to know that you're the answer to your generation. And God created you just as he created each one of these godly men who sit on this front pew right here. He created you the same as he created me. He created you with a divine purpose and a beautiful masterpiece plan that had your name on it. Nobody else can take it. He didn't think you were ordinary or meant to blend in. He handcrafted you. He thought about you. He loved you. He loved you as if you were the only one. And he gave his only son just for you to be able to live out that extraordinary plan in life that he has for you. I'm not against careers. I'm not against money or fun in life. We all know all of those things have their places. Please do not walk away tonight and say that that random girl who got up there just spoke and said that you had to be in church 24/7. That's not what I mean. That's not what I'm saying. I do believe we need sold-out Christians in many different careers and fields today. But I'm simply saying I want you to realize that your life is not your own. You have been bought with a price. You are precious. You do have purpose. And your life is so much more than what you can see of it right now. Do not give up in the tough times, in the unknown times, and in the times when it all looks different than what you had imagined in your head. Only God has the bigger picture for you, for your life. And also, please do not solely rely upon the wisdom and lives of these ministers, of this ministry, or your parents, or your grandparents, or your pastor. You must come to a place where you decide for yourself if you're going to live in the life God has for you, or if you're going to live in the life you have for yourself. I spoke briefly earlier about those decision points that I had to come to in my life. And I encourage each of you young people here, each of you young couples who want to be in the ministry, to search your heart. Make some decisions through prayer. Start tonight. And relying on your parents and your grandparents' relationship, it doesn't work when you go and get your first secular job and you get questioned and you get challenged. I can tell you that from experience. I've been working in the secular workforce since I was around 15. It didn't work like that. I had to know for myself. Only relying upon a strong Bible-based church and your pastor to preach you a wonderful message every week is not going to get you through either. Just simply going to every youth camp that comes around and every youth rally that comes around is not going to save your soul. It's not going to make you exempt from being accountable for your life. James 4:14 says, "Whereas you know not what shall be on the morrow, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away." Life is short, but it was meant to be lived out to the fullest potential God has for it. And part of that potential is for you to make a difference in the world that God gave you and to become more like Christ. Maybe you can't go overseas. Maybe you can't go and start the new bus ministry. Maybe you can't start a local community outreach. That's okay. But I can promise you that there is something for every born-again believer to do. The love God showed on the cross was given to every person, ever born, for them to do something with it. I love ministry. I mean it with all my heart when I say that I would much rather my life end tonight if I couldn't live in the will of God and fulfill His calling. But I also don't want to paint a picture of charmed life success and that everything will go your way and be perfect once you do accept that call of God. I grew up involved in multiple ministries. I may have had some advantages to quicker learn some things than others have, but there are still things today I wish I had known 5 years ago. I love my life. I actually have a quote in my bedroom that says, "When you stop and look around, this life is pretty amazing." So yeah, I wake up every day, and I thank God for it. And I ask God for open doors on the work site and in the marketplace and in the different outreaches that we're involved in here. But there are also some mornings and nights, I'll be very honest, I wake up or I try to go to sleep and I think to myself, I had no idea it would be like this. I never saw that one coming. No one in my Bible school or none of my Sunday school teachers ever taught me how to deal with such a real life issue like this. Or I'll lay in bed and think, my heart hurts so bad. There's so many broken and lost people, and I feel so helpless to make a difference. How am I ever going to make it? So as I'm coming to a close tonight, I just want to share a few last things that no one ever really sat me down and said, hey, let me teach you this to prepare you for the ministry and life and the greater will of God as a young person going out. Some or most of you in this congregation may already have it all down, and if so, that is perfectly fine. And if you want me to pat your back after service, I will gladly do so. However, speaking from a young person's point of view, to a congregation that holds every age in it, but also includes young people, that is a passion of my heart, young people. And I pray that many of you are interested in ministry, or at least living for God, at least giving your life to God. I'll share what I do know so we can all learn together and grow from each other. And I have learned from personal experience that I wish I had known earlier in my life, is that in ministry and in the will of God, your character is what's going to be tested way more than your competency ever will be. And if I had known that 5 years ago, I probably would have spent a lot more time working on my character than I did my GPA in college. I've also learned that leading people is a lot harder than learning the next chapter in your textbook or your Bible. Yet leading is primarily what ministry is going to all be about. I've also learned that it's really easy to cheat your family and your friends out of your time and attention, all in the name of, I'm doing a work for God. God created family structures, and He created relationships as a priority and a necessity. Do not ignore the one just to build yourself up in another. I've also learned that mentors are not optional. A few of you in this congregation who have gotten to know me or have known me throughout my life, you know that I can tend to be very stubborn and very independent. And I learned quickly enough, though, that, there comes a time when I can't fix it. I can't figure it out. I can't do it in myself. And I'm extremely fortunate to have quite a few mentors, many who are here in this congregation tonight. But I only wish that I'd started earlier with learning from those mentors. And to name just one more, I've learned that perseverance is underrated. Ministry is not easy, despite the picture and the stories and lives that show it as such. Far too many people will leave the ministry before their calling ever was fulfilled, let alone expired, all because it ended up as not being easy enough for them. But if it were that easy, everybody would be doing it. And that goes back to the fact that God created you to be you, not everybody else. I'm still learning as I'm going through this beautiful journey called life, And if you think of me after you leave this conference, maybe you will pray that God will continue to teach me and let me grow. I'm going to be praying that is what happens to each of you throughout this conference. And as you leave, that you will continue to be stirred and that you will grow and go back to your homes or your mission fields or your families. And through God, that you'll change your world and you'll continue to do outreach and discipleship. My prayer tonight is that each one who came to this conference who is already involved in outreach, that you'll continue to do it and be encouraged, because God is with you, and when God is on your side, nothing can stop you. And my second prayer is that those who are here without Jesus in your heart, or either you're not fulfilling your calling that God has for your life, that you will be stirred in some way, in some fashion, and realize that God loves you. And then start today to show someone else the same thing. Because after all, souls are God's heartbeat. I want to have God's heartbeat. And only what each of us do in this life for Christ is all that's really going to matter. Thank you.